This is the Rebel Call channel. Welcome to today's show. After 2 assassination attempts on Donald Trump, I think it's safe to say that we can all expect a third and final act. You know, kind of like a movie has a first act, a second act, and a third act. Kind of like the movie we're watching play out now called Political Theater, Politics in the United States of America, where even the candidates themselves, the people who are in power, supposedly are flat out playing characters from movies. Like I've mentioned before, Donald Trump is playing the character from Stephen King's Dead Zone, the same exact stereotype character that the president plays in that film, who brings about sending off nuclear bombs, which is what I'm getting into with the missiles have landed in a second. Or Joe Biden playing the character that we've seen in films like Hot Shots, the president falling down the stairs, falling up the stairs, literally the same exact thing. So we probably could expect that we're going to see what in theater they call a 3-act structure, right? We had our first act, which is the big opening act, right? That first big assassination attempt. And yes, there have been other supposed assassination attempts on Trump, people rushing the stage, but not a real assassination attempt. The first one we saw in July was Act 1. It was big. It was him standing on stage, pumping his fist, all staged perfectly, right? With your same CIA-controlled shooter who never lived to talk about it, who never had a trial, because of course no trial is needed in political theater. And Act 2 didn't seem like such a big act, right? This last event that occurred on the golf course where the guy was supposedly lying in wait for 12 hours, if you didn't hear that, didn't really, kind of like most movies, right? The middle of the movie is kind of slow and it kind of lulls its way and everybody's waiting to get to the climax, right? The 2 acts, first 1 and 2, kind of everything comes together for Act 3. And you could bet your bottom dollar we're going to get in Act 3, because all of the psychological operations that they've been doing over the last 8 years, going back to Hillary and Trump, is all playing out for this final act, the November 5th election. And there will be a third assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Will it happen before or will it happen after? You can make no mistake about it at this point that the government is controlling all of these events because they control both sides. I can't make it clear. These people out there who are conservative think that Donald Trump is against the deep state and the deep state is doing whatever they can to kill him, right? Yet somehow they believe that the deep state has the ability to put him on trial, to attempt to assassinate him. They have people on his Secret Service on the inside. Yet somehow, miraculously, their vote actually counts in their minds. And they don't realize that's because they so much so want it to count. They don't know who counts the votes, by the way. They go and they cast a vote, and then the television, the same one they call fake news, tells them at the end of the day on November 5th who wins the election, and then they only believe it, of course, if it fits what they want to hear. They don't say, is the media making this whole thing up? Is the government themselves making the entire thing up? Even with both people being maybe possibly together in the same side and laying in the same bed together? Yes, of course they are. And let's start here with Trump, because we can expect a third act. Isn't it always kind of weird, right, that Donald Trump holds up that MAGA sign, and it is the number 3, which we, of course, look at as the 666 hand sign, which it is, but it is a number 3. And will it be that the third act, the final act, is the one that takes Trump out, which would actually cause potentially a civil war and martial law if Trump is elected and then is somehow taken out before he gets in office, or potentially taken out beforehand, and then some type of martial law is declared where Biden would stay in power? Wouldn't these types of scripts sound utterly insane? Well, of course they would. What's more insane is that people out there would actually believe it. Instead of saying there's too much going on, this is too chaotic, they are playing us like a fiddle. They don't want to believe that, right? So if you haven't heard, Trump released a statement where he said the bullets are flying and it will only get worse. And I'll read you his full statement. But remember, I talked about that character from the movie The Dead Zone? I talked about that character specifically because that's the one that Trump is playing. And in that movie, how coincidental, in that movie, he says a very similar line about the missiles are flying.
Better shape in this country. What the hell is happening to this country? Anybody tell me what the hell is going on? Papers right here on the front
Believe this
page.
guy? He's just getting warmed up. You vote for him, John? And vote against this turkey. He's dangerous. A real man of the people. Sworn acts.
You don't stand
Can't they see through this guy?
I'm challenging you right here and now to join me, to join a growing army.
Do it, General.
You're insane.
Do it! You're not the voice of the people. I am the voice of the people. The people speak through me, not you. Do it!
Complete the sequence, Mr. President.
Not necessary, Mr. President. We have a diplomatic solution.
The missiles are flying. Hallelujah.
The most exciting, the most important case.
Johnny! Don't!
The missiles are flying. Hallelujah.
So the bullets are flying, the missiles are flying, eerily similar, right? And let's read the quote from Donald Trump. He says the rhetoric lies as exemplified by the false statements made by Comrade Kamala Harris during the rigged and highly partisan ABC debate and all of the ridiculous lawsuits specifically designed to inflict damage on Joe, then Kamala's political opponent, me, has taken politics in our country to a whole new level of hatred, abuse, and distrust. And of course, that's why they're doing it, and that's why they picked Trump. He says because of the communist left's rhetoric, which is true, they are communists, the bullets are flying and will only get worse. Allowing millions of people from places unknown to invade and take over our country is an unpardonable sin. Our borders must be closed and the terrorist criminals and mentally insane immediately removed from American cities and towns, deported back to their counties of origin, or countries, I think he meant to say, of origin. We want people to come into our country, but they must love our nation and come in legally and through a system of merit. The world is laughing at us as fools. They are stealing our jobs and our wealth. We cannot let them laugh any longer. Make America great again. So the bullets are flying and it's only going to get worse. It's a little predictive programming there, because if you think that it's just going to end at 2 assassination attempts, well, you are completely wrong, because there's a final act that is brewing, right? Now, for anybody out there that thinks that it's crazy to think that Donald Trump would be compromised based on what you just heard, right? Based on how they've put him on trial and all these other things. Let me just give you one of the common sense bullet points that I talked about during the first assassination attempt. If the government is trying to kill Donald Trump, okay, are you familiar with DARPA? Are you familiar with the real magic bullet that the government has? They have X-Acto guided bullet, which repeatedly has been used against moving targets. And Trump was a sitting target, but they could actually bend and curve a bullet to hit a target that they want it to hit. And this isn't new technology. This is old technology. So if they were going to get the job done, they would have got the job done. Because if it's an inside job, then the government's going to use their own technology, right? Their own technology. This is government technology. This isn't them just making a Manchurian candidate and throwing him out of a taxi cab and telling him to go do this, what they programmed him to do. They'd say, well, we only get one shot at this, right? And they missed on the first shot. How convenient, right? Then the second time, they get it. They get a chance, right? And I remember a YouTuber talking about the perfect way to do it would have been on a golf course, right? I mean, crazy how that happened. I remember some guy sounded a lot like me. He said if they were going to do it, they wouldn't have done it on a stage because they wanted everybody to see that. They wanted everybody to see the blood dripping and Donald Trump raise his fist because it sucks you in deeper into the psychosis, right? And I said if they were going to just quietly do it, they could have done it in a tunnel somewhere. They could have done it in a hotel. They could have done it in the middle of the night. They even could have done it on a golf course since Donald Trump openly plays every day. And what did they do? They attempted it on a golf course, but they failed again. So that's twice. You would have thought after the first time they would have made sure that they got the perfect guy, a guy who hits 10 out of 10 targets, a guy who, even if he couldn't hit 10 out of 10 targets, they didn't even need a guy to be there because they could have used a DARPA magic bullet, a guided bullet to do it, right? But nobody wants to think about that. And they don't realize the reason they don't want to think like that is because they love this game that they're in. They love this psychosis that they're in because they love the character that they're rooting for. Just like a football team. You love your team, right? They're on Team Trump and they refuse to believe it. I guess it's like if you watched your favorite sports team all these years and then you realize that your sports team was in fact the wrong gender in disguise, or, they all took their masks off and they were reptilian. Maybe you would say, hey, I'm not going to root for the Philadelphia Eagles anymore, the Dallas Cowboys anymore, right? I'm not going to root for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. All of a sudden, all these guys I thought were real people aren't even human, right? Well, in this case, all the proof is there to show you that if they wanted him dead, he'd be dead. But these people just don't want to believe it. In fact, if you pay close attention to what they're trying to incite, it's hilarious, right? Elon Musk, Donald Trump Jr. Look at Donald Trump Jr. You know what's getting really old? He says, having to have conversations with my 5 young children about radical leftists trying to kill their grandfather. No person should ever have to do this in America or anywhere else, and yet I've had that conversation 5 times again yesterday. And Elon Musk, of course, who's doing everything he can to jump on board with the conservatives to make sure that they're on board with technology, the Neuralink, and all the other deceptions that are coming, with SpaceX included, says the incitement to hatred and violence against President Trump by the media and leading Democrats needs to stop. And these people don't realize what it's like to be baited, apparently. I look at it and say, haven't you had like an ex-girlfriend or boyfriend that's manipulated you? And over time, you just start to say to yourself, I feel like I'm getting manipulated. Every Friday night, 8 o'clock, she says she's going to the library. Right? But she comes home at 2 o'clock and she smells like a man's cologne, and she tells me again that she read this book, and she tells me somebody bumped into her at cologne on, that's why she smells that way. And then you believe it. And then it happens again and again and again and again. And eventually, don't you just start to say, all right, maybe I'm going to go on Friday night at 8 o'clock and just see if she's actually going there. I don't want to be a stalker or anything, but maybe I'll just check because I have suspicions about it, right? And then eventually you find out you've been getting manipulated, right? Well, guess what? That's what the Republican Party is doing to conservatives, and that's what the Democrat Party does to Democrats/communists, right? So Elon Musk as well is on board. All of a sudden, this guy who was liberal his whole life, he's a massive Republican. He's the face of what? Free speech. You can't tell you're being baited as the government took away your freedoms of speech on platforms like YouTube, etc. And instead of fighting back and continuing to speak on those platforms, everybody like cattle got herded over to Rumble, to BitChute, to Twitter, all done by design, right? That's what they wanted you. Speak in a vacuum, right? And that's why people I know continue to fight on platforms that they're not supposed to speak on, because they can actually reach people and help wake them up instead of being stuck in a hive mind. The other thing Elon Musk tweeted out, of course, it's pretty incredible at this point. Someone said, why do they want to kill Trump? And Elon said, and no one's even trying to assassinate Biden or Kamala. Inciting violence. Both sides are inciting violence against the other because they're being played like chess pieces. They're pawns in the game, right? And of course, some of the other stories that have come out about the shooter is his involvement with run-ins with the law. So this plays into what? The conservatives. How are these people who are breaking the law, how are they allowed to get guns? How are they? Because the digital ID is coming soon, right? Got to make sure both sides are on board with red flag laws and digital ID. So the suspect had 100 run-ins with the law, right? But Democrats don't believe that because they believe that he's really a Republican. They don't believe he's a Democrat, right? Because he registered Republican, and then he had a sticker on his car that said Biden and Harris. So then they could go back and forth and argue with each other about whether he's a Republican or a Democrat. Obviously, these people just continue to take the bait. They're just being fed by the government, and they don't realize it, right? Just like I said, just like being in a manipulative relationship pretty much, right? So for other people out there, I just want to point this out, okay? Because I've been getting a lot of comments from people who are coming in. They're looking for videos on this topic, right? They find my channel. Most of whom think I'm just some guy with 20,000 subs, which I am. I'm not important, that's for sure, right? But really, if you think about the effect of having a channel with, say, 500,000 subscribers many times over, 100,000, 300,000, when people come and see a channel like mine that's smaller with 20,000, I'm very grateful for having that many, they don't take it credibly, right? But if the channel actually had 1 million, like Benny Johnson and these other guys who they allow to have those types of subs, they would see what I'm saying and they say, well, there's a lot of people that are listening here. So maybe there's something to what this guy's saying. Maybe there are a lot of like-minded people who are questioning the left and the right. They don't want you to even think that way. So that's why they wipe channels like this one out over and over and over again when they hit a certain amount of subscribers. So then people see it and they say, oh, it looks like a little cubby of YouTube, probably all bots. That's the comment I've gotten most commonly today. Many, many bots, right? Probably bots. Yeah, think again, buddy. So if you remember, before the first assassination attempt, I want to bring this up so people out there who might be new understand this, okay? The media obviously feeds us this stuff. People like me, we're not prophets. We don't claim to be. We're certainly not on the inside, because if I was on the inside, I'd be very well off and I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing, struggling, putting up ridiculous videos sometimes just to have channels approved, okay? But they were feeding us this narrative of Trump and getting assassinated for years, right? And weeks before it, July 1st, I covered some of these headlines were, what is presidential immunity? The get out of jail free card could be used by Biden to assassinate Trump, right? Supreme Court gives Joe Biden the legal okay to assassinate Trump. The president can now officially assassinate you, right? These were all from 2 weeks prior to the assassination attempt. This is how programming works, right? Remember, the news is there to program you. It's there to manufacture you. So there's ways that the brain works that most people don't understand. Subliminal messaging works, and feeding you this information beforehand works. It's more likely for you to accept these things as reality because you've already heard about it than to look at it and say, this isn't real, this can't be real. They've been seed planting for a while. I've talked about all the seed planting with Donald Trump and Abraham Lincoln. They have used so many comparisons, and they've been putting in so many photographs during his presidency and after, where Donald Trump is gazing over at Abe Lincoln, right? Remember, Abe Lincoln was assassinated, right? A president who was assassinated. You might remember some of the other things, the very obvious ones, right? At least to me, very obvious was the Nutcracker release that came out this year from the Biden administration, right? The Mouse King was portraying Donald Trump. His suit, his manner, he was portraying Donald Trump. All the narrative at the time was about Trump trying to be a king. All these pictures we saw in the news with Trump wearing a crown in magazines, etc., right? Trump was portrayed in this video as the Mouse King. He was assassinated in that video right in front of the picture of Abraham Lincoln. Now, the Republican media, the alt-right media, of course, doesn't cover stuff like this. Instead, they want you outraged about just the ridiculousness of the actual performance, how men are dressing as women and all that stuff, which, of course, is ridiculous. But that's where they want to keep you at that level of actually thinking, common sense thinking, where we shouldn't even be having conversations about men castrating themselves. It shouldn't even be discussed. It shouldn't be open to discussion. It should just be, we got to move on. We can't deal with this type of stuff. If this is where your thinking is and you're agreeing with this stuff, maybe it's time to institutionalize some people instead of having this be something we're fighting about over and over again. Well, can you take puberty, blah. This is what they want you thinking about. Again, and it causes great division, right? There's a mass hypnosis going on. So the other stuff we've seen, the subliminal stuff with Trump, Snoop Dogg, Kathy Griffin, these are all things that everybody's seen. Johnny Depp talking about assassinating a sitting president. Has it happened before, right? Madonna talking about blowing up the White House. The theme has been pushed over and over and over again. And when it happened, all of a sudden, all these people were claiming to be prophets. They were claiming that, and they're oh my goodness, so-and-so predicted this. They had a vision in the night. They must be a prophet, right? The government's been telling you that it's coming. And they've been working you into the left-right divide so you're emotionally invested in this. And when they pull the plug on the entire thing, then civil war and chaos ensues. And people go, well, civil war. Is it really going to be a civil war? People will be running down the roads? Well, I believe it's going to be civil division between states. I think states are going to pull out of the union. I think it's going to be blue and red states. I do not obviously expect a weakened country like this for people to actually take things to violence, because this is part of how this communist transition has occurred. People are afraid to even breathe on each other these days, especially after what just happened with the outbreak. Nobody even wants to talk to each other anymore, let alone fight. But they certainly will move away from one another if told to do so. Now, the potential, again, is there for this to occur with Trump before or after. And I don't know when it will occur. But there will either be an attempted assassination that will occur, that they'll come out and tell us that Donald Trump is no longer alive. The final act. That's what they're building towards. Now, I don't think it would happen until he's actually in office, but it could happen in between. I don't know, because whatever happens is their plan, and it's been their plan from the get-go, and it will likely work, and only they will know, because remember, we're data online. Everything we say and all this stuff that we post on social media, they observe, so they'll know when the right time to do it is to get the reaction that they want out of it. And that's what this is. It's build up, like a movie. Emotionally invested in the movie. You're emotionally invested in the first act in the film. Do you go into a movie and watch the first 15 minutes and leave before the end unless the movie is complete garbage? No, you don't. You're emotionally invested. You stay. You're like, oh, I got to see how it finishes, right? Well, just think about how invested people are, thinking that this is their real life, that these political figures are a part of their real life. They care about them. They vote for them. They represent them. right? So think about a movie when you stay till the end to see what happens versus real life and waiting for that final act. What's it going to be? Who's going to win? Everybody knows, for starters, whatever the outcome of the election is on November 5th, whoever we're told loses is not going to accept the outcome. Democrats will blame rigging on Russia. Conservatives have been trained to blame, the CIA and the FBI, our own government, the Democrats in power. They won't let go of power, right? And that's done by design. And of course, what they don't understand is that it's not rigged, it's fake. There's a huge difference between the two. Rigged would make it sound. The word rigged means that they're favoring one side versus the other. Fake means that the entire thing is fake. The entire operation is not real. Your vote doesn't count. It's amazing. I said it earlier. These are the same people. They say that the deep state's trying to kill Trump, and they think conveniently that they're this bad at taking him out, that they're this bad. They just, they keep messing up, right? And a part of that, I think, is tied into the way they view Democrats because of the characters that Biden and Kamala Harris have been playing, bumbling fools. That might have kind of be a subliminal thing that they've done to make them think, well, they can't get the job done because they're all bumbling libs, they're bumbling fools, they're tripping downstairs. They don't know really, to a T how they've mastered mind control. They can make MK Ultra trend, but these people seem to think that the government is sloppy in their approach to take out the president. They don't realize when they're being worked, right? So they think that the government is trying to kill Trump, right? But then they go to the polls on November 5th, and they don't think to themselves that the entire thing could potentially be fake. They're trusting that their vote's going to count. So what? You're going to say, oh, yeah, well, once you lose, once they tell you that Trump doesn't win, if that's what they do, you're going to say what? That the whole thing was rigged. It's the same people who wouldn't let him in. They took him to court, right? Don't you see how this whole thing works psychologically, how they're playing with you, right? And then, of course, you're taking the outcome of the election from the television set, which you already have said is fake news, right? So the fake news is giving you the results. We don't count the ballots. There's no hand ballots, right? That are counted on camera, which is the way it should be done. That's what it should be, like the Truman Show. Everybody should show up and write it down, zoom in, show the person actually doing it. It's a real person. They have to show their ID. They're an American citizen. Okay, great. And then we get the real results of the election, and we have to tally each one, and everybody could fact check it. No, you don't get told. You just get told this is the result. And you watch fake numbers fly up and down the screen and get manipulated into the psyop, thinking that you're actually watching something that's real news. But then at the same time, you say it's fake news, the news themselves. CNN's fake news, but you put CNN on for the election results, right? Oh, you put on Fox News and say it's all fake. And this stuff that they're doing, they're acting out. You are psychologically invested in this if you believe in the left-right paradigm at this point. The first assassination attempt should have pulled people out of this. They should have looked at the whole operation, how the kid got there, how he outsmarted the Secret Service. But it didn't. Why? Because in their own minds, they don't realize the government was feeding them the narrative of deep state, inside job from the get-go. They think that they came up with this idea. They think that they were sleuths, and they're like, no way, this is an inside job. And then they take pictures, they do above shots of how did this guy get here without the government know. Okay, so the government allowed him to do it, right? And then it happens again. And still nobody's saying, well, wouldn't they just use a DARPA magic bullet? Wouldn't they just use a directed energy weapon? Couldn't they just use any of this technology they have to wipe him out with radiation or something else? No, they just can't seem to think that way. You know how his ear miraculously healed, right? They don't want to pull themselves out. They hear me talk. They don't even listen to what I say. They just automatically think this is a Democrat channel. That's how deep the Republican psychosis is. We've talked about the Democrat psychosis over the years, right? Where we have, literally insane thinking, right? Some of the stuff, it's so insane. It's chill. It's like a 3-year-old thinking, but that's what they've trained, and they're trained to be that way, right? In communism, these people are just under full control, whatever the state says they believe. So now all of a sudden, all these people who are Democrat literally believe men could have babies, right? They literally can't tell what's a woman and what's a, it's insane stuff. But the conservative side, right? What have we seen? They come here and they don't even listen to what someone like me says. They just go, he's a Democrat. He's not, what are you, not Trump? What are you, a liberal? Oh, what are you, a Tea Party? No party. I'm on the civilian party. The only team I'm on really is Team Jesus Christ. But in reality, what this whole thing is called a psychological operation. They should know better. They should be able to see this and say, if they want him dead, he'd be dead. And that's just common sense logic. So I believe we'll see a third act. Then again, if a third act occurs, remember, I'll tell you now, because all the videos I've done over the years, way before the actual first assassination attempt, okay, this will probably be gone. So remember these words. If they tell us that Donald Trump is dead, he is not dead. If there's a third assassination attempt, just like all of these people from Epstein, all of them, they get shipped off somewhere else. They don't actually get killed. But imagine what type of chaos they could cause with a final assassination, a third one. I mean, I didn't even think of this script beforehand with 3 attempts, but 3 attempts makes perfect sense, right? A third act. Think about how much now more angry these people are after 2 failed assassination attempts, where they're all thinking the government's rogue, and they're right, they are rogue, but they're still keeping you in a conservative honey trap instead of an actual revolution occurring. I can't say it enough. I can't. So if there's a third one before the election, chaos will ensue. And if there isn't, there will be one at some point in time. Because I would be, look, I'm not going to make any guarantees, but I would be shocked. I'd be floored if Trump one day just dies and we're told, just like, when any of these other presidents, like Gerald Ford's dead today, I'd be pretty shocked if Donald Trump died today. They didn't build him up into this character to just let him go out like that. They built him up in this character to give him a final act, one that would psychologically cause chaos. Remember the motto of these people that the conservatives claim to know: order out of chaos. And what would cause more chaos than that? I thank everybody for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.